Shabbat Shalom,
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
and welcome to Adith Emmanuel on this March 2nd Friday of the month. And we are excited that tomorrow we're going to be celebrating as Jude McMacken is called to the Torah as a bar mitzvah. And tonight on our second Friday, we will be reading Torah. And so we look forward to that as well, whether you're joining us here in person or through the blessing of technology. And if you are joining us remotely, we invite you to say Shabbat Shalom in the chat and maybe mention where it is you're joining us from. It might be from New Jersey or Illinois or California. We're glad you could be with us. We turn now in our Siddur to page 636, page 636. And that's in the brackets, as we welcome in Shabbat with the words of Yedid Nefesh. Continue now with the lighting and blessing of our Shabbat candles, and so we turn in our Siddur to page 121, and I invite to the Bima Jude and Abby and Paul to lead us in the blessing and lighting of our candles, followed by Kiddush.
These Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us, as their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
And we continue with Kiddush on page 123.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu, b'shabbat kodsho, be'ahava uvratzon, hinhilanu, zikaron lema'aseh, bereshit, Ki hu yom tehila lemikra e kodesh. Zeher litziat mitzrayim. Kivanu vecharta yotanu kidashta. Mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava uvratzon hin haltanu baruch atah Adonai mikadesh hashabbat. Amen.
L'chaim.
And we turn in our Siddur to page 138 for L'chadodi. While we're standing, we take a moment to turn to one another, perhaps not the person next to us if we already know that person, somebody in front of us, behind us, across the way. Introduce ourselves to one another and greet one another. Shabbat Shalom. And if you're joining us through the blessing of technology, we invite you to say Shabbat Shalom and introduce ourselves to one another here. And so for a moment, we will invite the congregation to be seated. This week, I'm thinking about bowing. Because this week we celebrated Purim, and a scene in the Megillah, the story of Esther, that might be arguably the point that unfolded the plot against the Jewish people is when Mordecai decided that he would not bow down to Haman. Also this week in our Torah portion is Ki Tisa, and Jude well knows that contains the story therein about the golden calf. And after the golden calf is constructed, God, who has been speaking with Moses for about 40 days, tells Moses that he better get back down to the people because they have made themselves a molten calf and bowed low to it and sacrificed to it. And you can come tomorrow and hear how Jude is going to interpret this part of our Torah. So bowing is a gesture of reverence. Mordecai was not going to give this respect to Haman, for as a Jew, Mordecai only bowed before God, and those who bowed to the golden calf were disrespecting God. So what exactly is bowing, especially in the context of Judaism? Rav Abraham Isaac Kook, the first Ashkenazic chief rabbi in pre-state Israel, wrote that bowing our head signals an attitude of deference and humility. In bowing, we acknowledge and give thanks to God. And there are several prayers in which we add the choreography of bowing. Tonight, we are going to speak of three of them. One is Baruch Hu, which will be our next prayer, and the others are Avot ve'imahot and Aleinu. So Baruch Hu is one of the prayers in our Shabbat worship, and actually every day, in which we bow. And how exactly do we bow for Baruch Hu? We bend not only with the waist, but also with our knees. The word knee in Hebrew, does anybody know the Hebrew word for knee? It's berech. Berech, you can hear it. Berech sounds like Baruch, right? And so we bow with our knees as well as our waist. Months ago, we learned that the Baruch Hu is an antiphonal prayer, a call and response. So the leader says something and the congregation replies. And so when the leader recites Baruch Hu, they bend their knees and bow. So Baruch Hu et Adonai, and then standing for that word. And when the congregation responds, the congregation goes Baruch Adonai, standing for the word Adonai, Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed. And so we are bending our knees when we hear that word Baruch Hu or Baruch, the same shoresh, the same root. Rabbi Rachel Martyr describes the bowing during Baruch Hu as follows. When we offer blessing to God, we're giving of ourselves. We bend and bow to show our humility before God and to acknowledge that we are not ultimately masters of the universe. But the Baruch Hu is not only about acknowledging God's rule, we stand upright when we say Adonai, as if to say we come before God with dignity as our partner in spreading blessing throughout the world. And so now, as we are able, we stand with humility and dignity to recite Baruch Hu on page 146. On page 149. This is an hour of change. Within it, we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, my sibling, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it, we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, my sibling, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim.
בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מסביך היום על לבבך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בעיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
On page 157, we continue together. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. On page 161. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Our next prayer on page 162 is Vishamru, just giving you a little foreshadowing of this prayer comes in this week's Torah portion, which is so cool. So if you wanted to look at the footnote at the bottom, it says Exodus 31:16 through 17. You'll hear a little bit more about this prayer in a little while. Vishamru.
Lesha
next prayer that we are praying not on page 164, but on 165, which we call Avot V'Imahot, we also bend our berech, our knee, at the word Baruch, right at the beginning of the prayer. And then at the end of the prayer, where we have, if you're looking in that big paragraph at the top, the second to last line, what we call the Chatima, that last blessing that seals the prayer, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah. At that word, Baruch, we bend again. And it's similar to the way we are bending for the Baruch Hu. Baruch Atah Adonai, right? We're bending and bowing, and then we're up for Adonai, and this, the end of the prayer as well. Baruch Atah Adonai. Actually, the melody is the same. And traditionally, we only bend these two times, at the beginning of Avot V'Imahot, and again at the end of Avot V'Imahot. And though the next prayer afterwards sounds similar in melody, we don't continue to bow for that particular prayer in the Giverot. And it was Rabbi Cook who spoke of bowing as a gesture of humility. And he also spoke about keeping in mind a healthy dose of humility. We must also not become too humble. He advises, when humility brings about depression, it is defective. When it is genuine, it inspires joy, courage, and inner dignity. And so we limit our bowing in this section of the service. And so we're going to turn the page back to page 164 as we rise as we are able in body and spirit and continue with our tefillah.
Adonai sifatai tiftachu v'yahi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips and my mouth will declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. האל הגדול הגיבור הרע, עליון גומל חסדים טובים, ומודה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גאול לעולם אדוני, בחיי כל אתה רב להושיע, מושיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, בחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, צומק נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו, אישי בעבר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומתעמלה, מלך פנימית ומחיה, ומצליח ישועה, נאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, בחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
May be seated. As we turn to page 177. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life. wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Yotum Melech Aron Lichol HaShalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim
We continue our prayer now silently, whether we are led by the words on the pages of our Siddur through page 181, or other prayers throughout the prayer book, or those meditations and thoughts in our hearts. We turn now in our service to Seder Kriyat Torah for the reading of Torah. And so we turn in our Siddur to page 364. 364. As we are able, we rise. So our Torah reading for this Shabbat, our Torah portion is called Kitisa, and I'm going to be reading right before where Jude is reading tomorrow. It was very easy to find the portion. I said, the next word is Jude's first word. So the part I'm going to be reading is including the prayer Vishamru. And it's, if you want to follow along in the Torah commentary, we're on page 635. So if you are in the front row, the Chumash or the prayer books are under your seats. If you're in the second row or further back, you might look for the thicker navy blue book. On page 635, I'll be reading from Exodus chapter 31, verse 15 and following. And this in here is the prayer that we actually sang tonight. And it's the verses that tell us that we should shomer, to vishamru. You hear that, to keep or to observe Shabbat. And this is something we should do not just here in that moment in the Torah, but for generations to come, on and on forever. And also noted in our verses is that Shabbat is a sign. It's a sign of the covenant between the Israelite people and God. So in future generations, when we observe Shabbat, that's a sign showing God that we are part of this covenant. Shabbat is one of those intangible things, so how can it be a sign? It's a sign by our lighting candles, blessing the wine with kiddush, eating challah, gathering together for a Shabbat meal, getting together in the synagogue, reading Torah. All these things of keeping Shabbat create the sign. So why observe Shabbat? At this point in our Torah, we are instructed to follow Shabbat because we're imitating God. God worked for 6 days, for creation. And then the seventh day, Shabbat, vayinafash. God rested. You hear Shabbat, God rested. Shabbat is our day of rest. Vayinafash. You hear the word nefesh, soul. Vayinafash, I like to say like resouled. You got renewed and refreshed. So we observe Shabbat for ourselves. It's a gift we give ourselves. And we pause from the rest of the work week, and then refresh ourselves. So we continue now with our Torah reading, and it's my pleasure to call to the bima Jim Kennedy. Na la'amod Chaim ben Yaakov velvel uvela livarech al haTorah.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch et Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch et Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Amen. Sheshet yamim yeyaseh melacha uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat Shabbaton Kodesh Ladonai Kol ye'aseh Kol ha'oseh melacha Bayom HaShabbat Mot Yumad V'shamru B'nei Yisrael Et HaShabbat La'asot Et HaShabbat L'dorotam B'rit Olam Beni Uvein B'nei Yisrael Oti le'olam Ki sheshet yamim Asa Adonai Et hashamayim v'et haaretz Uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash Vayiten el Moshe Chechaloto Ledaber ito behar Sinai Shnei luchot ha'edut Luchot even Ketuvim be'etzba Elohim
Baruch et Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch et Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We turn our thoughts and prayers now to those who are in need of healing, and so we turn in our Siddur to page 371 in the middle of the page. For those of you who are watching through the blessing of technology, feel free to write the name of your loved ones whom you're thinking of at this time who are in need of healing, whether it's a healing of the body or mind or spirit. Those here in the congregation will have a chance to add those names after I share these names of our extended Adith Emmanuel family, those people for whom we're sending blessings of healing to on this Shabbat. Howard Myers, Marcy Gittler, Holly Willett, Micah Aronow, Jeremy Solar, Mel Klein, George Goldstein, Susan Casper, Harriet Eisner, Carla Teisch, Beth Shelley, Elaine Moskowitz, Linda Drachman, Chaim Ben David, Eileen Davison, Craig Davison, Hugh Morton, Art Bond, Roberta Levine, Jordan Maverick Steinberg, Deanna Amariello, Lisa Galda, Brian Zabel, Ed Crosby, Myra Kaplan, Jeff Schaefer, Lulu Rivuela, Marion Wertz, Aaron Tepper, Lily Tepper, Louis Alahut, Mary Parker, Tricia Tepper, Carol Schaefer, Mary Mednitsky, Jocelyn Jackson, Jen Jones, Shirley Friedlander, Michael Infanti, Gary Garnick, Ann Marsden, Rick Ulrich, Ileana Cohn, and others whom we are thinking of at this time.
Harry Bookman.
Samira Ronica.
Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei HaCholim. As we're able, we rise as we lift and dress Torah. Before we return the Torah to the Ark, I just wanted to give one more teaching about bowing, which is coming up at the Aleinu, and we're going to segue from returning the Torah to the Ark to Aleinu. So if you would turn for a moment to page 586, page 586 at the bottom of the page. I like to think of the Aleinu as the last big thank you before we conclude the service. So when we get to the Aleinu, you know that the end of the service is near and your oneg is not too far away. But we have to give one last expression of thanks to God. And one of the ways we do that is by bowing. Bowing, we talked about, is an expression of humility, and it's also an expression of gratitude. So the words aleinu lishabeach mean it's upon us to praise, to give honor, to celebrate God, to thank God. And if you see at the bottom of that paragraph, whether you're looking at the Hebrew or the transliteration, it indents a little, and the words are va'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim. So the word va'anachnu means we. Korim, that word means to bend at the knee, because the word kera means thigh. So it looks like this: va'anachnu korim umishtachavim, which means bow. We can look at the translation, and it says we bend the knee and bow. And then the last word is umodim. Modeh ani toda, modeh, we thank. And so as we bend and bow before God, we also are expressing our gratitude. And so we turn now first to page 374. As we are able, we rise in body and spirit to return the Torah to the ark and express our gratitude to God with Aleinu. We continue on page 586 at the bottom of the page. We turn our thoughts and prayers now to those who are no longer with us, and so we turn in our Siddur to pages 598 and 599. As we think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, as well as those who died at the season in years past. If you are joining us remotely and you have a loved one's name to add, please do so at this time. We mention with sadness the death of Howard Gordon, father of Marcy Burr, grandfather of Jacob. The funeral service for Howard Gordon will be this Monday at 11 a.m. graveside at Mount Sinai. We also think of, during this period of Shiva and Shloshim, during these first 30 days, Sandra Ruth Goldberg Rosenberg, mother of Neil Rosenberg, grandmother of Sophia, Warren Brand, brother-in-law of Chuck Gross, Arlene Coulter, sister of Marcy Gittler, as well as those who died at the season in years past, whose yahrzeits we observe on this Shabbat. Estelle Albin, Dina Berman, Janos Boudet, Richard Chaikin, Jane Eggendorf, Robin Enders, Judith Plaskow Fireman, Adele Flair, Bruce Hans, Gertrude Ingber, Margarita Isaac, Arthur Kelly, Bela Kennedy, Ida Lederer, Ray Lefko, Evelyn Levinson, Mitzi Longer, Rose Malamet, Jacob Middleman, Shirley Moskowitz, Susan Otterberg, Eugene Salzer, Philip Smith, Seymour Huberman, and others whose names we should add at this time. We invite those who are in the period of Shiva and Shloshim to rise at this time. Those who are in the first year of mourning to rise at this time. Those who are observing a yahrzeit on the Shabbat to rise at this time. As we think of them and all those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own Zichronam Livracha, may their memories be for blessing, as we all rise now in comfort and support, continuing with the words of Mourner's Kaddish on page 598. Yit Gadal v'Yit Shemei Rabbah, v'Alma Divra Chirutei v'Amlich Malchutei, v'Chayechon u'Vyomechon u'Chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala u'Vizman Kariv v'Imru Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabbah Mevarach Leolam Omei Almayam. Yitbarach v'Yishtabach v'Yitpa'ar v'Yitromam v'Yitnaseh. V'Yitadar v'Yitaleh v'Yitalal Shemei Dekudesha B'Yahu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, damiran b'yalma v'yimru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba min Shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru Amen. Oseh shalom b'romav, huya aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen. It's my pleasure to call to the Bima Diane Singer, our synagogue president, to share with us some Hodaot, some announcements.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Rabbi Mamas Faller, Cantor Sandy, good to see you, for leading us to tonight's service. Thank you, Jim, for doing the Aliyah. And thank you for Janice and Chris for setting up Oneg. Special mazel tov to Jude and his family for your upcoming bar mitzvah. And as always, a special thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. Please join us tomorrow morning at 8:45 for Torah Talk and Bagels, followed by our 10 o'clock morning service when Jude will be called to the Torah in honor of his bar mitzvah. This Sunday is a very busy day, starting with the men's club brunch in the morning. The gift shop will be open during that time. Also, this month's guest speaker is Ruth Darlington. She's a Quaker climate activist. In the afternoon, Sisterhood is hosting its annual designer handbag bingo. So I'm very concerned. I want to make sure that you all arrive on time Sunday to your events. Please remember, it's daylight savings time, so spring forward. Okay, don't be late. Also Monday afternoon, Mahjong Mondays continue. All levels are welcome. The following Sunday morning, there will be a bagel sale in the social hall, sponsored by Yak and AFTI, and the gift shop will be open for its annual Passover Palooza shopping event. In the afternoon, Men's Club is hosting its annual bowling event. A few events to look forward to. Adith will be hosting its annual congregational Passover Seder the second night of Passover. Rabbi Richard A. Levine Kehillah Dinner is April 22nd. And at the end of April, Adith will be celebrating 25 years of being in this location with a concert featuring Noah Aronson. And our youth and adult choirs will be incorporated into the concert. So you would want to join us for that. Also join us after services in the social hall for Oneg. And lastly, tonight's thought for Shabbat is, know what sparks the light in you so that you, in your own way, can illuminate the world. Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.
Our closing song can be found on page 646. 646. That's a palindrome, and so is the title of this mitzvah, Goreret Mitzvah.
Mitzvah koreret mitzvah.
As we continue with Motzi, please join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, b'te'avon, and Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
maybe it was Sandy. Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're taking this home.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Lisa is my niece. She goes to Maryland, and she's sick. She's probably sick, but I wouldn't necessarily state my life.
But it's not the way we have